they would lionize Woodstock and forget about Harlem. And so they did. Because I've never heard of Harlem Woodstock or Harlem Festival 1969 until now. In October of 1969, Robinson was already hinting at the inevitable. The world would lionize Woodstock and forget about Harlem. The only time the white press concerns itself with the black community is during a riot or major disturbance. The major news media did not cover the 1969 festival as there was no violence or major disturbance. But check this out. The police didn't even provide security. Security came from the Black Panthers, and they made sure that the black community was safe. I'll be back. Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for checking out this video. Those who are new, appreciate you. Appreciate all you, especially my day one rioters. You know who you are. Okay, let's get into this content. As I said, I did not know about or have not heard about the Harlem Festival 1969. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Why so much of our history, I'm talking about the good things that we've done, the great achievements in an oppressive country, why is that always rarely talked about or hidden? You have to wonder why, you know? All right, let's talk about this. Like, you know, you hear they'll talk Woodstock into the ground, you know? They were talking into the ground. But things that we've done, great, and there was no violence. It went for a week, I believe, and the Harlem Festival, and it was no altercations, no problem. See, that's what happens when you leave us be. Don't come in instigating. Don't come in, you know, with outside interference. It's gonna come out sooner than later. But let's get into this content. Why the watershed 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival was overshadowed for 50 years. Let's find out why. During the summer, as the legendary Woodstock Music Festival, the Harlem Concert Series featured major Black American artists against a backdrop of massive social change. In October 1969, the writer Raymond Robinson took to the pages of the York Amsterdam News, the city's leading black newspaper, to pose a question. That previous summer, Harlem's Mount Morris Park had hosted a series of free Sunday afternoon concerts, known collectively as the Harlem Cultural Festival, which featured a startling roster of artists, including Nina Simone, Stevie Wonder, Sly and the Family Stone, B.B. King, the Staple Singers, the Fifth Dimension, and Gladys Knight and the Pips. The 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival was indeed a meaningful entity, Robinson wrote, but was it fully appreciated? The series had been an unprecedented success, with combined attendance numbers roughly 300,000 that nearly rivaled those of that summer's other unexpected musical phenomenon, Woodstock, which took place 100 miles north. As was the case with Woodstock, a filmmaker, Hal Tochin, had captured the entirety of that year's Harlem Cultural Festival, confident that the combination of music, Nina and Stevie, and the setting, a post-68 Harlem reeling from The assassination of MLK would add up to a feature-length film that could cement the series of Uptown Manhattan concerts as generations-defining events. Robinson couldn't have predicted that the summer concert series would cease to exist after the summer of 1969, and that unlike the upstate New York Rock Festival, the legend of the Harlem Cultural Festival, sometimes referred to in later years at Tochin's urging as Black Woodstock, would become a largely forgotten historical footnote. Yeah, it seems like a lot of our history just somehow is forgotten. The next summer, the fest was announced but never happened, with the founder later claiming that the event had been subject to millions of dollars of fraud by his white investors and that the mafia had been hired to unalive him. But in 1969, Robinson was already hinting at the inevitable. The world would lionize Woodstock and forget about Harlem. The only time the white press concerns itself with the black community is during a riot or a major disturbance. He wrote of the shows, which had taken place during an 8-week period without a single report of violence. It took place at an 8-week period without a single report of violence. Hopefully, he wrote of the festival's then uncertain future, it will continue to grow. The Harlem Cultural Festival began in 1967 when a 30-something local entertainer named Tony Lawrence was hired by the city's Parks Department to organize summertime programming in the neighborhood. During the next 3 summers, it grew into a vital crossroads of black music, culture, and politics. White politicians with national aspirations. RFK, New York Mayor John Lindsay, and black community organizers and civil rights leaders Jesse Jackson, Marcus Garvey Jr. all felt compelled to appear at the festival. It was a space where the era's hitmakers like the teenage Stevie Wonder and pop group The Fifth Dimension would perform the most popular songs in the country. It was also a space that bore witness to torch passing moments in American history, such as when gospel legend Mahalia Jackson beckoned her mentee Mavis Staples to help her sing MLK's favorite song, the iconic Precious Lord Take My Hand, less than 3 years before her death.
In the summer of 1969, America was in the throes of a countercultural revolution. Woodstock, the epic musical festival, has since gone down in history. Just 100 miles away, another lesser-known event went almost unnoticed, the Harlem Cultural Festival. Harlem was the epicenter of black culture in America, birthplace of the Harlem Renaissance, an explosion of jazz, dance, literature, and activism in the 1920s that produced some of the finest artists and thinkers in American history.
The festival was a way to offset the pain we all felt after MLK. Reverend Jesse Jackson, who spoke at the festival in 1969, recalls to Rolling Stone, the artist tried to express the tensions of the time of fierce pain and of fierce joy. 50 years after the Harlem Cultural Festival's 1969 apex, its legacy and the story of its unlikely origins, its momentous success, and finally its strange, devastating demise has finally begun to resurface. This month, the city of New York is revisiting its own history with a week of panel discussions on the festival, culminating in a 50th anniversary concert. This article was written in 2018. In Harlem, on August the 17th, featuring Sly and the Family Stone, guitarist co-founder Freddie Stone, Talib Kweli, and Igmar Thomas. Last year, British journalist Stuart Cosgrove published Harlem 69, a history of the neighborhood's transformational year that includes the most comprehensive account of the festival to date. And next year, a long-awaited documentary featuring Tochin's never-before-seen musical footage is finally slated to be released after years of failed deals and broken-down negotiations. This is a part of American history that deserves its own spotlight, and it's crazy it hasn't happened before, says Angela Gill, a concert producer who's teaming up with the Summer Stage Concerts primary curator and co-producer Neil Ludwig to put together the 50th anniversary event. As film director Jessica Edwards once told the writer Brian Greene, the Harlem Cultural Festival likely holds the distinction of the most popular music festival you've ever heard of. Tony Lawrence had a big idea. He was born in St. Kitts. The aspiring entertainer had spent his 20s working as a performer in music and television after moving with his family to Virginia as a child and later settling in New York. By the early 60s, he was being referred to in the press as the Continental Dreamboat, singing a blend of calypso, R&B, and soul ballads in a variety of languages. He recorded a series of forgotten singles between 1960 and 1962 for the obscure New York label Jude Records. Tony's biggest aim is to become a movie star. Wrote one newspaper in 1961, which is probably the only career that can eventually support his expensive appetite for flashy sport cars, sleek motorboats, and extensive worldwide travel. In 1962, Lawrence traveled to Jamaica to perform at the country's independence celebration. At one of his outdoor performances for 1,500 people, read one review of a show in Jamaica. The management had to ask him to change his tempo or stop singing because the swinging audience was demolishing the grandstands and getting out of control. By the mid-60s, Lawrence's nightclub act had earned him a regional fan base on the East Coast. One of Tony Lawrence's greatest fans, Sammy Davis Jr., considers him a lad with a great deal of personality and first-rate singing versatility. Read one account of the singer from that time. Lawrence had began juggling his showbiz career with a community-minded work in Harlem, where he began working as the youth director of a local church. In 1965, he used his minor celebrity to help raise funds for a playground and institute a Head Start program in the area. In 1967, Lawrence's civil-minded work in Harlem led him to his most important job yet, working for New York's Parks Department. That May, Lawrence and Parks Commissioner August Hexer announced their plans for a new summer event series called the Harlem Cultural Festival. The festival, Lawrence said, is about where the Negroes live, physically and spiritually. The Harlem Cultural Festival came just 16 months after the arrival of the city's new mayor, John Lindsay, a progressive Republican who took a measured, hands-on approach to the city's mounting racial tensions. The Lindsay administration was both dedicated to civil rights, says Alan Zirkin, a professor of NYU who worked in the department in 1967 and also concerned about the risk of rioting. The Parks Department, under leadership from Lindsay, made efforts to appease the city's aggrieved black population, reaching out to community leaders in the neighborhoods like Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, to offer up summer Parks Department jobs that had previously been handed out to relatives and friends of the department. The Harlem Cultural Festival has to be in that context, says Zirkin, who speculates that the Lawrence Run concert series was another Lindsay-era initiative intended to quell a growing fear of uptown riots. It was not privy to any conversations where that would have been made explicit, but was clear to me that that's what that festival was. It seemed appropriate at the time, Hexer would later write of the festival, to give emphasis to a black community. In its first 2 summers, the Harlem Cultural Festival immediately became a formidable local event, attracting artists like Count Basie, Bobby Blue Bland, Tito Puente, Mahalia Jackson. Despite its tiny opening budget, by 1968, many of the summer festival's Sunday evening shows, such as the Gospel Festival and the Summer Festival, were drawing 25,000 fans per night. The festival is a showcase for Harlem, Lawrence said in 1967. But talent and audience would come from all over New York, all over the Americas, and all over the world. After the summer of 68, Lawrence spent the off-season negotiating with various lawyers, businesses, and agencies in an effort to secure funding that would enable him to turn the 1969 festival into the biggest yet. Lawrence lined up a corporate sponsor, and the 1969 festival was set to be filmed for a series of national television broadcasts. A large multicolored stage was built in Mount Morris Park for filming purposes. Since I had no money for lights, Hal Toshin, who filmed the 1969 shows, will later write, I built the stage facing west so I would have a light all afternoon. With an increased budget and a growing reputation, the festival attracted an unprecedented level of talent for the 1969 season. The 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival was one of the most exciting things that happened in Harlem, says former Congressman and Harlem native Charles Rangel. And I know damn well that a whole lot of entertainers wanted to be a part of the Harlem Festival. Every type of music was represented, says Ava C.V. Toshin's daughter, who attended the festival as a young girl. Gospel, blues, pop, rock, everything. It was hotter than hell. As Sly and the Family Stones' July performance, according to the band's saxophonist Jerry Martini, who can still vividly recall specifics of that afternoon, the band's drummer Greg Errico performed with the flu, and the Harlem crowd did not immediately take to the band's funk rock fusion. They were a tough audience, says Martini. We didn't go over well in the beginning. People weren't real familiar with our style in 1969. We weren't a conventional Harlem soul band or anything like that. We really had to work for it that day. Leaked footage of the band's set shows an apathetic crowd standing motionless as the band performed songs like M Lady and Sing a Simple Song. But by the time the band reached its hits like their number one record, Everyday People, Dance to the Music, and I Want to Take You Higher, the crowd was fully cutting loose. We had them going, Martini says. In addition to showcasing the lineages of jazz, blues, and gospel, in 1969's Harlem Cultural Festival was a gathering of many of the era's most popular artists. The Fifth Dimension performed the Age of the Aquarius, the biggest song in the country that spring. Gladys Knight and the Pips sang a Syrian rendition of their number 2 hit, Heard It Through the Grapevine, and Edwin Hawkins singers delivered their international smash, Oh Happy Day. All these artists felt the need to come to Harlem, says Jesse Jackson. The festival's location was central to the entire premise of the series. As opposed to the growing spat of youth-oriented music festivals like Monterey, Newport, and Woodstock, the Harlem Cultural Festival drew a cross-section of fans, families, school kids, churchgoers, who had happened upon Mount Morris Park, a real big center of Harlem at that time, says New York jazz saxophonist Tyrone Burkett, who attended the festival as a child on a given Sunday afternoon. It was a timely lesson on racial stereotyping, writes Stuart Cosgrove, speaking of the contrast between Woodstock and the Harlem Cultural Festival in Harlem 1969. The young, wealthy white entrepreneurs made a monumental hash of planning, while a black-run public event running over 6 Sundays smoothly came together with no significant trouble, no arrest, and no record of public inconvenience. The concerts often served as a space to vocalize the growing tensions and differing sentiments of the late 60s Harlem. When a July 20th, 1969 soul theme show featuring Stevie Wonder and Gladys Knight was interrupted to announce that the United States had landed on the moon, the crowd erupted into an overwhelming chorus of boos. Yesterday, the moon ran an Amsterdam news editorial that week. Tomorrow, maybe yes. The next month, on August the 17th, Tony Lawrence invited on stage some of the 200 men and women who had protested the construction of a state government office building in Harlem that summer, arguing in the Times that Harlem needed a high school, not a state office building. On that same day, Nina Simone ended her incendiary set with the recitation of a black nationalist poem by David Nelson. Are you ready to smash white things, to burn buildings? Are you ready to build black things? Simone asked the crowd to enthusiastic applause. Are you ready to kill if necessary? Simone's provocations stood in contrast to the more conciliatory post-MLK proclamation posed by Reverend Jackson. We can demand what we want. Isn't that right? He preached to the crowd that summer. So go to school, children, and learn all you can. And who knows? You may be president of the United States one day. We really needed a shot in the arm, says Rango. There was an open protest, but there was a sense of bringing us all together for a great sense of pride. White folks might have a county fair, but we didn't have cows, things like that. We had the greatest jazz musicians in the world. Tony Lawrence had an even bigger idea. The 1969 festival had drawn hundreds of thousands of fans, but the rest of the country hadn't taken notice. The Harlem Cultural Festival was a concept, he thought, that could be expanded, adopted elsewhere, made national. In the fall of '69, Lawrence brought the idea to Newark, New Jersey, where he staged the Love Festival featuring Bobby Blue Bland and the Chambers Brothers, an event that drew more than 60,000 fans. He made plans to bring the Harlem Cultural Festival to Fayette, Mississippi, where he would host a concert with B.B. King and the Staple Singers in honor of the city's first black mayor. By 1970, Lawrence was trying to turn the Harlem Cultural Festival into an international touring enterprise that would travel to the South, the West Coast, even Bermuda. But by the time the summer of 1970 had arrived, it became clear that almost none of Lawrence's plans would come to fruition. Plans for the fest to tour nationally never materialized. After vague attempts to bring the Harlem Cultural Festival to Lincoln Center in 1970 were aborted, it was announced that the event was canceled due to a lack of private funds. Little was heard from Lawrence until 1972, when the Amsterdam News ran a series of stories in which he made incendiary, unfounded allegations about his former business partners in the Harlem Cultural Festival. Lawrence is now suing his former white partners in promoting the festival for $100 million for fraud, wrote the paper, implicating a series of sponsors, New York banks, and television stations in his allegations. Lawrence claimed that his lawyers and business partners, Gerald Kushnick and Harold Beldock, had stolen several hundreds of thousands of dollars from the festival's fund. When contacted by the Amsterdam News at the time, all of the parties implicated in Lawrence's allegations denied any wrongdoing. Contacted by Rolling Stone, several lawyers associated with the case in the newspaper say they have no memory of the man. Reached by telephone, Beldock says that the Harlem Cultural Festival was not something I was involved with at all, stating that his partner Gerald Kushnick had worked with Lawrence exclusively. He accused me and Kushnick of fraud, he says. That's outrageous. Kushnick died in 1989. Lawrence went further, claiming in the newspaper that his life was under threat from a mafia enforcer. According to Lawrence in New York Amsterdam News, after visiting his friend Sidney Poitier in Pleasantville, New York, in May of 1970, his car blew up in an attempted murder. The Pleasantville Police Department did not have any documentation of the alleged crime, and a local newspaper made no mention of such an event at the time. Reach for comment, a representative for Portier says that the actor has no recollection. Says that the actor has no recollection of Mr. Lawrence. Lawrence also alleged several instances of the use of the N-word amongst the corporate entities and white business partners involved with the festival. And while Lawrence's account provided an explanation of what had become of the festival, his story ultimately could not be corroborated, leaving the Amsterdam News the only publication to print the allegations. To conclude that attempts to substantiate Lawrence's charges against the parties mentioned proved inconclusive. According to the New York Amsterdam News, at the urging of congressional representatives Charles Rangel and Shirley Chisholm, Lawrence's case was brought to the New York District Attorney's Office, but the case was eventually dropped. Afterwards, Lawrence would try to revive the Harlem Cultural Festival yet again. In 1974, he tried to rebrand the festival as the International Harlem Cultural Festival, but the concerts never took place. Throughout his life, Tony Lawrence remained a private enigma, a mystery to even those who worked closely with him. We would say, "Where's Tony? We haven't seen Tony in weeks. Where is he?" says Zirkin, who worked as Lawrence's assistant at the Parks Department in 1967. And then he would just show up and you never knew where he had been or what he had been up to. In the 80s, Lawrence occasionally appeared in local nightclubs and acted in local productions of plays like Mama I Wanna Sing before disappearing from public life. Although several people once associated with the festival seem to think Lawrence has passed away, Rolling Stones was not able to find any confirmation of Lawrence's death, nor any records of his whereabouts. Despite being the primary driving force and organizer responsible for Harlem Cultural Festival, Lawrence made enemies with many of the others involved with the series. My father did not refer to Lawrence in a favorable light, says Ava Swavey, daughter of Hal Toshin. Toshin's proposed film suffered much the same fate as Lawrence's festival. After a few local television specials aired portions of the Harlem Cultural Festival musical programming in the late 60s, Toshin, who created a copyright for a motion picture by the name of Harlem Festival in July of 1969, failed to secure any larger deal for a documentary. For several decades, the tape reels remained in the basement of Toshin's family home in Westchester. Then, towards the end of his life, Toshin considered a series of offers with acclaimed filmmakers like Alex Gibney and Robert Gordon. But for a variety of financial, creative, and personal reasons, Toshin, to the frustration of everyone around him, backed out of the deals at the last minute. Toshin's Harlem Cultural Festival footage, filmed in color and high resolution 2-inch tape, has become a holy grail of sorts, with extraordinary excerpts leaking over the years. In 2005, Sony released a portion of Simone's historical set, including renditions of her not yet released standout, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. I didn't have to show the footage to many people before I got a deal going, says Sweevy, who at one point came close to securing a film deal for her father's tape. Anyone who's seen this footage has flipped out over it. I really hope it sees the light. Now, more than 50 years after the Harlem Cultural Festival, a feature-length concert film on the Harlem Cultural Festival is finally in the works for release next year. Before Toshin died, he made a deal that handed over the ownership of his treasured footage to an entertainment lawyer named Robert Fivolent, who is in the process of putting together the footage into feature-length film slated for 2020. Meanwhile, Tlaib hosted tribute show taking place in Harlem this month will shine a spotlight on the political underpinnings of the 69 festival. The show is about promoting the type of pride and unity in the black community that was promoted in 1969, says Igmar Thomas, the show's musical director who has worked with Lauryn Hill, Nas, and Kamisha Washington. That can definitely be promoted again right now, given the climate, whether you want to speak about activism surrounding law enforcement or the literal concentration camps at the border or abortion. We wanted to come together to say that we outnumbered them. Concert producer Angela Gill, who was working on conjunction with Neil Ludwig, the 50th anniversary Black Woodstock curator and co-producer, to ensure that Lawrence's original dream of taking the Harlem Cultural Festival nationwide finally comes to fruition. The summer stage show, which will take place at Marcus Garvey Park near the concert's original site, will serve as the launching of Future X Sounds, a national tour that merges art and activism, hosted by artists like Layla Hathaway and James Poyser in each of the cities the tour visits. Gil Thomas and Ludwig are responding in a sense to the same urgency once posed by the Amsterdam News' Raymond Robinson. In his October 69 column, Robinson had asked if the festival would ever receive proper mainstream recognition. It is the hope of this reviewer, he wrote, as well as the hundreds of thousands of blacks in the country, that this type of black enterprise will continue to grow and multiply so that the black man can attain his place in the economic structure of the entertainment industry of this nation. I wanted to hold back my thoughts on the article and things that was written until the end. I appreciate Lawrence. They said he's from St. Kitts. Now I can appreciate him not being a native to this country and treating the Black American community with respect, and that has been the basis of things we've been talking about for the past few years about Native Black Americans and foreign black people in this country, how they have not represented us, and they have not fought for justice and fairness for us, being that we are the reasons why they're allowed to come here and make a life for themselves in this country. So I can appreciate what Mr. Lawrence did. So far as him wanting to take it globally, that was a great idea, and it could have been phenomenal. But you see how it is when it comes to doing positive things for us. The money it dries up or is not available, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about, the resources, the lack of resources in our community. Instead of flooding our cities with law enforcement and National Guards, how about do a survey and find out how many cities you're sending the law enforcement to, find out what kind of resources they have. What kind of resources they have for the black youth to get them off the street and get their minds and attention on something else. See, you're not going to do that because that's too much like right. So what you want to do is come in and add to the oppression, frustration, and anger. You got to wonder, are you trying to set this up for a civil war? And as I said in the comments to someone else, they were saying that, they're pushing the country to a civil war. I said, yeah, it will be a civil war, but it's not going to be between us and them. It's going to be them fighting one another like it was in the 1800s. They fought one another. The other thing that I thought was interesting was how he accused the investors of stealing from him. And that's not anything new. Like I mentioned before about the Freedmen Bureau. These people just were freed from slavery and had the opportunity to amass millions of dollars. And it was stolen from them. So it's a history of are people's money being ripped off? Because those are the people they have in charge of the financing and the backings and the law. You know, you have to go to someone who doesn't look like you. And then there's a strong chance that they will rip you off. Let's be real with it. Let's stop playing the game. The other thing I thought was fascinating, was quite interesting, was how he said people were responding to his claim saying they never met him. They didn't know him. I was like, really? Do you not know him? Or was that a slick way to diss him to say you're not that important and I would never vouch for you? Because after all, I'm not going to mess up my career for you. I thought that was crazy. But yeah, a lot of things have to change, and a lot of things are changing for the better for us, for those who are Native Black Americans. It might not look that way, but as long as we mind our own business and let these people tend to their own issues and problems that we have nothing to do with. I don't care that we live in this country and you guys can say, well, these problems are your problems too. Well, what was happening to us? We said the same thing to you. Our problems can be your problems too. And you was like, no way, niggers. Those are your problems. We don't have anything to do with it. We are tired of fighting. We're tired of fighting, helping everybody else. We're tired of it. And you have gotten that message loud and clear. So if you want us to help you, you're going to have to come with something very genuine. But then, majority of us don't want your help. We just want you guys to leave us alone. And we can take care of ourselves. We have the brain power. We have a lot of people in our community that have the money, the resources, and the know-how. Just leave us alone. Leave us alone, like you said you want us to leave you alone. But for some reason, you always find a way to make yourself known in our circles. Why? Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this information. And thank you for your support. Thank you for your way that you support this channel and the way you feel the desire to do so. Other than that, take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.